Welcome to the Black Girl Burnout podcast. Kelley here. And today we are talking about rooting before you rise. We're going to uncover the expansion that you don't see and that maybe other people don't observe. And I want to start by asking this question. What if the quiet season you're in isn't a failure? What if it's just your root system growing? I know we live in a world where so often, particularly as Black women, we are encouraged to do more and still more. It feels oftentimes we hit a goal, we do a thing, and the goalpost just moves. So now instead of the thing that we just accomplished, now it's just a little further away. We've just got to do a little bit of more and a little bit of more. This episode is asking you to maybe flip the narrative. What if rooting is not a retreat? What if rooting is expansion? What if taking a step back isn't necessarily a bad thing? What if it's a necessary thing that you need to do before you spring forward or even bloom bigger? Remember, this episode in May is really about blooming and expansion, about how we can take up and create big, bold, beautiful lives. So if you are interested in expansion and you want to grow, but you're also tired of grinding and you want to feel at home in your own life, this episode is for every Black woman who's exhausted from chasing expansion that doesn't actually feel good. Instead, we're going to look to nature, we're going to look to the plants that bloom all around us, and we're going to see some lessons that we can learn from them. And the first one is, anytime you see blossoms or blooming, it's important to understand that that's like the last step of a thing, that there's a whole lot more going on in the process of what makes plant life, flowers bloom, that nature doesn't visibly bloom all year long. But before a tree or a plant can rise, they root. The most powerful growth that happens is what happens beneath the soil, the things we don't see, the underground spaces. What can that look like for you in your life? It could mean taking a quiet season to reset your career in a new direction. It could be a sabbatical or a break from dating to figure out what intimacy actually means to you before you engage in it with another person. It could be journaling for 30 days without feeling the need to tell a single soul or crafting 55 Instagram, TikTok-worthy posts to highlight it. The truth is, some of the deepest expansions that we have, they happen in the dark. And you don't bloom because you want to. It's not something that happens on a whim. You bloom because your roots are ready. It is when you've planted the seeds, it is when you've created that root system, that expansive growth that happens underneath, that it shows visibly. And that is what I'm on a mission to talk about. This month is all about expansion. It's all about blooming. But I really want to challenge you in this episode to create a narrative where you realize that sometimes what is unseen, sometimes the thing that feels like a step back or a contraction versus an expansion is actually growth, is actually you in bloom, is the big, bold, beautiful life that you deserve. At the end of the day, you need to root with clarity, not just calm. So many of us are looking to the world and all the things around us to figure out, how do we become the biggest, boldest version of ourselves? But a lot of times that work needs to be done deep down in here, not out there. And a lot of times what we see out there is asking us to answer the wrong questions. We don't mean to, but a lot of times we are chasing the wrong goals. We think it's what we want. We think this is the best way to bloom or expand, but it often leaves us more exhausted or feeling trapped in a way. But what if instead we slowed down so we could hear what we really, really want? One of the ways this manifests for me, and I think about expansiveness and blooming and this notion of rooting first, really grounding in your body and in your life before you bloom, is I feel like when I am doing that practice of rooting before I rise, before I bloom, before I expand, What that looks like to me is I start to ask the questions beneath the questions. There are a lot of questions and answers being provided for us out in the world. And I touched a little bit upon how I feel like the wellness space and the self-improvement space has been what I call aestheticized, or it's become more shallow because we're asking the wrong questions, frankly. For example, how do I get a snatched waist is a fine question, but is it going to give you the answers that you really want or deserve to expand? What if instead the real question you're asking isn't about inches on your waist, but it's actually about how do I feel safe and joyful in the body I have? How do I wake up every day excited about who I am physically and I'm in love with what I see in the mirror? When you reframe and slow down, you stop focusing on the snatched waist and maybe you focus on the body that brings you joy. And allow yourself to be, expansive about how that looks versus chasing an aesthetic or feeling tired or hungry to achieve the summer body. What if instead of asking, how do I grow my following, which trust me, I know all about that question. What if the question beneath that question is, how do I feel truly seen and supported in my work? How do I feel like I am making a difference or that I have an impact or that I'm not invisible, that I have worth and I have value? There's nothing wrong with wanting followers or a snatch waist for that matter. But a lot of times when we think we're in a season of expansion, I'm going to get the body of my dreams or I am going to hit 1 million followers. We lose sight of what actually is going to make us feel the best, what's going to make us truly bloom. Or here's another question. How do I earn more? How do I get 7 figures or 6 figures? There's no shortage of people and accounts and ideas and all kinds of ways to make more money. But is that really the question that's going to lead you to expansion? What about this one? How do I create more financial peace? I talked about this a couple episodes ago, the power of creating peace in your life. That financial peace isn't necessarily a dollar amount. It's an internal feeling. It's no longer having anxiety. It's the freedom to go out into the world and to consume products, to have freedom of dollar and movement. And that doesn't necessarily mean you have to make 7 or 6 figures to do that. Here's the point. If you're asking the wrong questions, even the right answers won't set you free. If you do not take the time to root, you don't leave space to answer the question behind the question, to get to the bottom or the depth of what you really need. When we take a step back, when we root, it lets us hear the question that your soul is actually asking, not the quick fix question or the have you chasing shallow answers, but the ones that make you feel truly in bloom and that makes it visible. The second thing that I think living a rooted life, the concept of stepping back or getting smaller or contracting the work that you do that isn't visible. What I think it allows you to do is, we already talked about, it allows you to get to the root of the real problems, the question behind the question, but it gives you this 50-50 acceptance of who you are and your aspirations and your goals. It allows you to have a nuanced life where you hold joy and growth at the same time. We talked earlier this month about self-improvement versus self-examination. It was a great conversation with Daria Burke where I quoted Apollinaire's famous line where he says, sometimes in the pursuit of being happy, one must simply pause and be happy. That oftentimes we get stuck in a loop of doing more and more and more. And it doesn't lead us to expansion. It leads us to anxiety. It leads us to criticism, harsh criticism of ourselves. And I really think it's important that we can both love where we are and still want more. A lot of times we just skip to the wanting more. I know I'm guilty of that. We forget about loving where we are. For example, our body image. In a world where we are getting bombarded with images of what you should look like, what is attractive, what is selling, what is the marker of success, what body shape that looks like, it can be really easy to get trapped into a self-improvement where if you are not looking like, frankly, some of the people who are getting all the attention on Instagram or social media or TikTok, that you're never going to be satisfied. And the truth is some of us are never going to look like that. It's just not physically possible. And in a world where still the less African featured you look, the more closer to whiteness that you look, the more likely you are to succeed. If you are not multiracial or lighter skin or have hair down to your behind naturally, you can get yourself trapped in these aspirational goals that are built on lies and racism and all the things, but more importantly, won't actually allow you to celebrate the beautiful body you're in. What about things like overextending yourself, right? That true friendship or true community means martyrdom and giving up everything at a moment's notice, being willing to drop everything to give everyone something. What if that actually is keeping you stuck in this self-improvement of giving more and more without appreciating the generous, beautiful person you are within? And this isn't just about you. This is also about me. I'm very intentional about a few things. I, for example, am now on video. And this is a big step for me. I never wanted to be here. I'm very vocal about that. I am kicking and screaming to visuals, mostly because I deeply resent having to present a visual to the world where it feels like I now have to compete with other people in the podcasting space who look a certain way, who are sized a certain way, who are younger. And there is an internalized unspoken pressure that visual isn't necessarily for people who are visual learners, which I'm happy to be coming to you and sharing the podcast this way. But it's more about an aesthetic, which I cannot tell you I deeply resent. But I am learning to hold the fact that the visuals and my resistance to them, I can hold in one hand about the need to look a certain way and be a certain way, and accept that it's also just a really great way to grow. And it's an unconquered portion of podcasting I have not done and I need to do now, and I need to embrace and love. So how do I hold those two things? I accept that I am not 30. I accept that I am not a size 4 and I don't live in the gym and I'm never going to. That part of my life has passed. And can I just tell you, with my full chest, I could not be happier that that's happening. I can hold that I am not going to chase that. And I'm not going to show up with a full beat of makeup every time. And sometimes I'm just going to be like in my pajamas because that's how I used to record the podcast and I'm keeping it real. I can hold that here. And I can hold that changing to a visual medium, that being able to look in the camera and have you see who is talking to you, however I show up, that you being able to see in my eyes, not just in my voice, how true what I'm saying is and how deeply I believe it, is the expansive move forward. I can hold both of those things. The joy of accepting that I look how I look, I am who I am, and I'm happy with that. I'm not going to change it radically. I'm not going to be out here chasing trends. And to hold that being on camera is the next best step, and I need to step into discomfort and move forward. The bottom line is, you can want more without rejecting who you are today. You can love and honor who that person is without stopping yourself from moving forward, and vice versa. You cannot continuously be moving forward at the expense of honoring who you are and what you are about in the moment. And if there is one thing I want you to take away from today's episode, it's that the loudest expansion is the one that doesn't require you to betray yourself. Those that know me back in the day when I first started talking about burnout know that I'm the person that talked about how burnout is a betrayal, that burnout ultimately is a series of self-betrayals. And so expansion cannot be betrayal either. That when we root, when we step back, when we go a little quiet, it allows us clarity, but it also allows us the expansiveness, the space to hold two sometimes contradicting ideas or realities at once in a way that brings us true joy and growth. So how can you do this practically? How can you really show your roots, so to speak, in a way that gives you power and stops you from being trapped in the nonstop go, go, go of the world around you? Well, I want to share with you 3 kind of practical areas that you can do this in and what that can look like. And first, I want to contextualize this by saying I've also feel kind of called to do this episode because the world is hard. So hard. I don't care how many resilient skills you have. I don't care how much deep breathing and vagus nerve relaxation you do. Existing in the world today is dysregulating. The good news is you can be okay. You can still expand and grow and have joy, but it would be disingenuous and delusional to pretend that a lot of people aren't out here minute by minute fighting for their whole lives. And to that end, I always want this podcast to be highly, highly practical. It's great to be aspirational. I aspire all day long, every day. But I also realize that we're in a very special moment where people don't need aspiration, they need information. They need practical, realistic things they can do that illustrate the concepts and theories and beliefs that we are all telling you on a day-to-day basis through podcasting or YouTube or wherever you may be consuming content that helps you live a better life. So I want you to know how to be practical about this rooting. It's not just a vibe, right? It's a practical experience. And I want to give you tips and tools that reflect the time period we're living in. I've said very clearly that what Black women need more than ever is tenderness and consideration. Oh, we need so much of that. We also need comfort in our coins. And as we stand what feels to be, particularly in the United States, on the precipice of a recession, as we find people unemployed out of nowhere, unsure when they're going to get a new job, it's important that the tips and tools I give you meet the needs that you may be in at the moment and still honor what I'm talking about. So to that end, the first thing I think about is redefining and rooting more than ever in community. And what does that practically look like? How about instead of expensive nights out, instead of curating Instagrammable photographs and moments at a restaurant or at an event where you all spend most of your time on your phone instead of present in the first place to what's going on, what would it look like? What would true rooting look like if instead you and those same group of women all got together, threw in a few bucks, and cooked a meal at a house, at someone's apartment? What would it look like if you all gathered around in your comfortable clothes, no makeup, and just chatted about life? Chatted about your goals, chatted about your frustrations, thought about ways to support each other. What if you took the time to root your friendships and deepen them instead of performing them on Instagram? Not only would that save you a few dollars, but I guarantee you the depth of conversation would be wildly different. You all would be dialed in. What would it look like to watch a movie or a TV show and crack jokes about it, make a little charcuterie board? Now, it's true. Hundreds or maybe thousands of people won't see it. But every single one of you in that room, in that moment, will feel it. You will expand and you will bloom and you will have people witness to it in a way that feels fulfilling instead of exhausting. Not everything requires us to perform or curate. The most expansive experiences just expect us to live them. What if you, secondly, focused on joyful movement instead of aesthetic fitness? There is nothing wrong with taking care of yourself. And if there is a routine or a specific fitness protocol that brings you joy, I'm not here to tell you how to do that, but I'm simply here to tell you, could you make the litmus test, the real way of knowing if it's expansive or helpful, if it makes you happy versus if it looks good. No disrespect, but I am no longer doing hard 75, nothing 75 that's difficult and challenging. I don't want to see no more flushes and fasts and any of that. That's not where I'm headed. I want to feel joy. I want a soft 75. I want a joyful 75. I don't want to starve myself to feel something profound. I want to just be present in my life and proud of the body I'm in because it has been through a lot, y'all. I have been thin and snatched. I have been plus sized. I have been well and I have been sick, and I'm thrilled with where I am today. And so I want to move my body in a way that honors it. And yeah, I want to look and feel good. Of course I do. But when I start from a place of joyful movement, and if you want to know more about that, you can check out the episode with Kelsey, Get Healthy with Kelsey. We had a whole episode on joyful movement. We've had multiple. Shameless plug there. But if you want to experience a life of joyful movement, which I want to do, it means that now I take walks every day and I listen to music that makes me think or just makes me smile and laugh. That I take opportunities to have dance parties at my house just to move my body, but I do it with excitement. I stretch because it feels good, not because I have to look a certain way. The last area where you can practically create roots that make you expansive, maybe not visible to everybody else, but still true growth and true blooming, is again, letting go of income obsession, not needing to have 7-figure and 6-figure goals. And I need to have this much proof of status. I need to have this car, this bag, this outfit, this look to prove that I am worthy. And instead chase financial peace. Another shameless plug. A few weeks ago, last month, we dedicated a whole month to finances in April. And I talked about the concept of joyful budgeting and financial peace versus financial freedom and what that means. What would it look like to build your budget around ease versus the acquiring of stuff? How do we make money feel safe and your bank account give you feelings of safety versus performance? And as always, be very careful about who you take financial advice for or who you pattern your life after. So many people are faking it, I can't even tell you. So many people are faking it. And at the end of the day, what does it mean that you own a brand if you still have anxiety about your life? What does it mean if you own a car or you are a certain size? If you still feel exhausted all the time and burnt out? To recap how to practically root in power, remember, dinner at home with friends is soft power. So is saying no to one more side hustle. Joyful movement in this day and age with the demands placed upon Black bodies is a protest. And financial peace is actual and true protection. Not everything we expand into needs to be big and costly. And when I say costly, I mean of our time, of our energy, of our emotional space, we can root and still bloom. And to that end, I want to talk about how the podcast itself is adopting this concept of rooted expansion. I have never been a person who just talks the talk. I'm always walking it, maybe not perfectly, but I'm walking it. So how am I doing that? Again, it goes back to the reduction of 3 episodes a week to 1. I realized that more isn't always more, especially when it comes to the cost of me, which was financially and emotionally and energetically. I was exhausted. I love this podcast. I love what I do. But I was missing the point. Expansion wasn't just about numbers and downloads and followers. It was about quality content and making sure that every person who's dialed into the podcast, every single one of you amazing people, that you are getting what you need to feel nourished and that you truly understand the message and the purpose of this podcast. I know that that choice may come with some consequences. It's really hard in this podcasting game. These streets are not for the faint of heart. It's still very joyful though. But if you are looking for a direct line to being a millionaire or building an empire, I'm not sure podcasting is it, especially as a Black woman. And I understand that going from 3 episodes to 1 means that my download numbers go down. And y'all don't know the behind the scenes of podcasting, but that has real consequences, financially and otherwise. The truth is I do need more followers. I do need more listeners. But holding that contradiction, holding that 50-50 piece, I can hold and understand that I want the podcast to expand and I want peace and joy more. And those are the 2 things I'm holding at once. I'm holding that I'm investing in visuals. I'm showing up here. I got my little light on for those of y'all watching, trying to get me a little glow going on here. I'm investing in visuals, but I'm not in full aesthetic conformity. I refuse to go overboard trying to look a certain way, curate a camera angle, do all these things to make you all, or to make other people, because y'all are already here, to make other people fall in love with my face. It is the face I got, and that's what y'all gonna see every week. I refuse to perform exhaustion for success. And I see so many of our beautiful Black sisters doing it. Grinding event after event, tour after tour, picture after picture, angle after angle. And frankly, it just looks exhausting. And I'm not doing it. And I know that that may mean that I lose people and that I never achieve the Oprah dreams I have for myself. I'm learning to accept that. And most importantly, I'm not expanding the podcast for the numbers. I'm expanding it because I truly have something to say. And no one's really saying it like this. I'm not saying this to brag. I say this because I feel called, that I am on a mission and I'm creating a movement that is asking you to do something really radical, which is to step back, to move in silence, to spend less, to show up more versus showing off, to stop performing and start living. Yet I am on a mission to help us unlearn capitalism and white supremacy and beauty politics. We don't deserve to do that because you all are beautiful as you are. You are completely capable of having rich and abundant lives. And they don't need to be tied to all the isms that we're constantly fighting all the time. That I'm on a mission to center joy, peace, and softness, shareable, practical, and livable. No more great ideas from people living lives that frankly neither of us are ever going to get to. I wasn't born 5'10" and I'm not a model, so I'm never going to get certain career paths that other people have. But that doesn't discount the joy I could have. I could actually have a more joyful life by celebrating every piece of me now, by prioritizing financial peace versus flexing and performing, by understanding that a lot of the ways we as Black women are ambitious is really just capitalist conditioning. It's a lie. And trust me, I've been there. Once you get to a level, they'll move the goalpost again. 5 figures was great. Now 6 figures is better. 6 figures, oh, you arrived, except for how come I don't feel good about it? Oh, because you need to be 7 figures. I'm on a movement to remessage that, to make our lives expansive in all the ways that will carry you when the world is falling apart. And I do believe, as a therapist, as a woman in her early 40s, as someone who has been broke and been upper middle class, I'm using finger quotes there because that feels like that's changing by the day, that I have a rare experience to bring and a rare voice that you need to hear. And to that end, I'm not going to beg for followers. I'm not going to beg for everybody to jump on the bandwagon of Black Girl Burnout. But I am going to say, if this resonates, please share this episode with a woman in your life. We're building a movement, and every single one of you is part of it. I could not do Black Girl Burnout without you, and it shows in all of your beautiful reviews that are pouring in, by the way. Thank you for each and every one of them. I read them, and I get the biggest smile on my face. You get it. You're opting out of the struggle, and I couldn't be prouder of us for doing it. So, as we wind down this episode, I want you to keep in mind a few things. You don't need to earn your bloom. You just need to root. Expansion doesn't have to be big. It doesn't have to always mean moving forward and doing more and more and more. Sometimes it means doing less, but doing it deeply. Also, now is your time. Not later, but now. Don't keep putting off celebration and blooming and joy till you look a certain way, have a certain amount of money in the bank, achieve a certain goal. I tell everybody in my life who knows me, particularly my mommy, I say, Mommy, I'm in bloom. And I want that for every single one of you. So this is your opportunity to reflect. Here's a little homework for you. Where are you being called to root? Where are you being called to quietly deepen? Where are there opportunities to look at the questions behind the questions? What do you deeply need? And then to ask yourself, what would expansion look like without performance? Without the need to do a selfie every time you hit a goal, without the need to tell everybody and your mother, without the need to feel like a accessory, a person, a vehicle, a job, a look, a body size will mean that you've arrived in your blooming. You can bloom whenever you want. But part of being able to bloom is knowing when to take a step back and do the work. Today, my invitation for you is to root now and bloom later. Build the bloom. And don't wait for permission to do it. And as I told you, I tell everybody, my mommy knows, she tells me, Kelley, you're in bloom. I say, Mommy, I'm in bloom. I'm blooming. And I'm blooming despite coming out of the hardest year of my life. It hasn't been maybe about 6 months since I lost my father after a very long and painful journey of his illness. It was a year where I almost lost my mom too. My finances were in complete free fall, taking care of parents. Last year was a hard year, and yet here I stand before you blooming. So if you are listening to this episode in the midst of a painful trial, you're like, Kelley, this was wonderful, but I feel like I am hanging by a thread in life. I feel sad. I feel betrayed. I am grieving me. I'm grieving a parent. I'm grieving time. I'm grieving a lot of things in my life right now. And you might be too. If that is you, don't despair, because the next episode is all about expansive grief. Yeah, I said it. The ways that grief can expand you. and you can still bloom. So stay tuned next week as I talk about that and how I am still managing to bloom despite very difficult circumstances in my life that I'm still digging out from and maybe never will fully recover from emotionally. That episode's going to be for you. In the meantime, everybody, you know how you can connect. Follow on Instagram, TikTok. It's at Black Girl Burnout. It's Black Girl Burnout on YouTube. I'm trying to get more content on there for you all. Follow me on Substack. I have so much fun over there, y'all. We're about 5,000 people in like 2 months. It's a great time. Substack's where it's at. And I am having a time expanding on themes that I talk about in this podcast. I go even deeper. I also have a paid subscription service where I go even deeper. I share more practical tools and tips, give away free toolkits. All of that's there for the cost of a fancy latte. It's $8 a month. That's it. If you can consider supporting that, please feel free to do so. And if you are looking for therapy, I'm starting a small private practice for New York State residents only. And I've created a HIPAA-compliant waiting list form where you don't have to give all your personal business. I'm not looking for that. But you can express interest. And when I formally open the practice, which will be in a matter of weeks, I can bring you in and we can see if you want some short-term therapy from me. If you're not in New York State and you're somewhere else around the world, I still offer coaching, non-clinical coaching positions, one-time high impact with prescriptive roadmaps for you called the Clarity Catalyst. The link to that will be also in the show notes. I'm only doing 15 slots because your girl's not trying to burn out. All that to say, lots more to come. And between now and next time I talk to you, rest well and stay blooming.